David Waltrop of the CIA Historical Division. And David, tell us about the new release you guys just made a couple weeks ago about the recovery of the spy satellite film.
Okay, well, we made it about, as you said, 2 weeks ago. And the title of the release is An Underwater Ice Station Zebra, Recovering a Secret Spy Satellite Capsule from 16,400 feet. And it details the recovery of a hexagon film bucket that had crashed into the Pacific Ocean in 1971 on re-entry. Now, this was what we call, or hexagon is what we call a film return system. What that means is that before you had digital technology, which we have today, we actually had to bring film back from space. So the satellite would launch, it would take pictures of whatever denied areas that it had to take pictures of. And then at a certain time, the people on the ground would send out a signal to the satellite. The satellite would eject a capsule containing the film. That capsule, which we called a bucket, would be deorbited. That would mean it would come down from the satellite through the Earth's orbit, through the Earth's atmosphere, and then it would deploy a parachute which would slow it. And as it was coming down, specially modified Air Force aircraft would literally snag it in midair. On the first hexagon mission in 1971, the third bucket, there was actually 4 buckets on that particular mission. The third bucket experienced a parachute problem. The parachute had apparently detached, and the bucket, which weighed approximately about 1,100 pounds, hit the ocean full force. Nothing was there to stop it, and it sank on impact.
And one thing you mentioned yesterday in your speech I thought was interesting was that they actually took the film to Eastman Kodak and had them develop it. And you mentioned that the film that they had developed before was of a high value, so that's why they were trying to recover this lost bucket, right?
Yes, that's correct. Okay. Eastman Kodak has, at the time, had a film processing center in Rochester, which processed and developed all the film that came from the photo reconnaissance satellites.
And you mentioned the bucket went all the way down to the bottom, and they used the Trieste, which was I'm not sure what DSRV stands for, but
deep sea vehicle.
Okay.
There were 3 versions of the Trieste. The Trieste 1 is sort of the original. It was created by Auguste Piccard in 1953. That's the one that went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench in January of 1960. If my memory is correct, it was 1960. There were 2 other versions that were followed onto that were created by the Navy. The Trieste 3, the Trieste 2, Deep Sea Vehicle 1, is the 3rd version, and that's the one that actually affected the operation.
And they went, I think you said it was over 16,000 feet?
Yes, 16,400 feet is the depth that I'm citing. It's the depth that is on the official record, at least that I've been able to find, of the dive, and that's what most sources that I've seen cite that depth. Other sources, including some that we've released 2 weeks ago, cite about 16,000, 1610. But
at that time, it was the longest recovery, I guess.
It was the deepest underwater recovery then attempted.
Okay. And they finally got there and had some problems with the weather. Tell us about what happened kind of end to end with
Well, there were actually 3 dives on the bucket. The third one was the successful one. In the first dive, the Trieste was actually in the wrong spot. The search team that found the bucket actually had a navigation error and had misreported some of their findings. It sent the sub, unfortunately, in the wrong direction. When they came back to the surface, bad weather moved in, so they had to cancel that first. So that ended that first dive. There was another dive later in the year, right before Christmas, and that too, they actually found the bucket that time, but the power was, they couldn't retrieve it. The sub was running out of power, so they had to end the dive at that time. And then again, bad weather came into the area and had to postpone dive operations. They didn't dive on the bucket again until the spring, so this is in 1972. This is in April of 1972. And what they were doing is they were diving in the evening so that they could surface at night the next day. So they dove around 5 o'clock on April 25th, and they surfaced at around 2:30 in the morning on April 26th.
And they actually were able to grab the film and bring it up to the surface, and then what happened? It pretty much just kind of disintegrated, I guess. Is that
right?
Yeah.
This actually was the deepest underwater recovery at the time. As they picked up the bucket, they picked up the film stacks, not actually the bucket. They picked up only the film stacks. And on the way up, unfortunately, the film stacks just disintegrated. A test of what they did recover, which was just about 25 feet of film that was sort of hanging through the lines of the hook. They did a test and found out that probably what happened is that the bucket just experienced such great stress at the point of impact that it just simply was so fragile it couldn't make the journey up.
Just slammed in the ocean so hard, I guess that.
Right.
But they were able to grab it and pick it up. It just kind of was not cohesive enough to save, I guess.
Right. It basically slipped through our fingers at the last minute. I mean, it was coming up, and about, I would say, about 35 feet, 20 feet as it got up, it just sort of disintegrated completely. And so it was the deepest recovery. And what I find interesting about this operation is it's a human operation. It tells the human side of the agency and what we do. A lot of people ask me, is it a success or is it a failure? Well, it's a human story. You can do everything right and still not achieve the outcome that you wanted to achieve. And in this case, that's exactly what happened. They did everything right. There were significant technical problems they had to overcome, significant weather problems. It was very small. They did everything right. They accomplished the mission of lifting off the bottom of the ocean. But at the end of the day, they did everything right, and they just did not get they did not achieve the outcome that they wanted to achieve.
It's pretty amazing they found it in the first place, given the technology back then. They didn't have GPS and the ability to use a lot of the stuff that we use now, so pretty amazing.
Right. Well, what they had is satellite navigation, but satellite navigation is only available really on the surface. After you go down a couple hundred feet, you can't get a signal from the satellites. So what they ended up doing is having to pioneer new technology to find this thing on the bottom, and that was they would use DOTS, D-O-T-S, deep ocean transponders. They would lay down a field of these dots on the bottom of the ocean and use those as navigation points so they could figure out where they were in reference to the other dots on the ocean floor.
And it's a pretty interesting story, and you guys have photos and that sort of thing on your CIA Freedom of Information website. How do people find that?
They can go to our public site, www.cia.gov.
Okay.
We also have the photos on the CIA Flickr site, and they can download them as a variety of resolutions for whatever uses they want to make of it. I will also say that on November the 3rd of this year, we will host a symposium at the U.S. Naval Undersea Museum, which is in Keyport, Washington, near Seattle. That's the museum where the Trieste 2 DSV is on permanent display.
Okay.
We're going to bring back some of the people that were involved in the operation.
Oh, wow.
and have about an hour and a half discussion, and they'll be able to give their personal experiences. In fact, one of the individuals actually was one of the pilots that went down to the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the actual guys that did it will be there for that. That's pretty amazing.
Yes.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks so much, David, for coming to Raleigh and for taking part in the SPY conference, and appreciate you guys coming. Hope to see you next time.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
More stories to come, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Very good. Thanks so
Bye.
much.